8 to give judges time to switch to the next presentation, but make sure you have enough time to present yourself to receive feedback from the judges. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Awesome, thank you so much.
All right, so my name is Thomas and this is Shantanu, and we are Quasi. Now, before we get into our whole customer validation and product, let's talk a bit about people. So people want access to things. They want access to creations. They want access to content. People are impatient about getting this access. Most of all, they're lazy. They don't want to do much effort to get this material. AI already solves almost all these problems, but AIs are, there are many problems with AIs. For one, they're hard to make. You have to have extensive coding knowledge to be able to make a model. Once you make a model and publish it, it's really hard for users to find these models. And if a user is somehow able to find these models, they're almost impossible to use without, again, extensive coding knowledge. This is where Quasi comes in. So we are an AI platform, and we solve all three of these problems. For one, we create an AI infrastructure, making it easier for developers to create models. Then we make it easier for these models to be marketed by having a place where users can search these models in one unified place. And once these users find the models that they want to use, it's really easy for them to make a creation, just a few button clicks. Now, imagine a world where you don't have to be an author to write the next best-selling novel, or a musician to create the next chart-topping song. With Quasi, anyone can create, share, and sell AI-generated content. We believe that AI will play a huge role in the future of content creation, and we want to build a platform that enables that. Whether you're a content creator or a content consumer, Quasi has something for you. Now, for developers, Quasi offers a simple and easy-to-use platform that enables you to create AI-generated content in minutes. You can choose from a library of templates or create your own custom template. You can also share your templates with other creators and sell them on our marketplace. Now, for consumers, Quasi offers a unique and engaging experience that brings AI-generated content to life. You can explore a variety of content genres, including books, music, and videos. You can also read reviews and ratings to help you decide which content is right for you. All that script that I just told you was actually written by an AI on the Quasi platform. Now, we can get into a little bit about how the magic works and show you a short demo of our MVP. So as you can see, this is what the site looks like. You can scroll down. This is the homepage. Select a model you want, in this case, an analogy maker, to see what the model does, a few example outputs, put in the analogy starter. So code is like life, have the model finish the analogy. It needs more maintenance. And just like that, AI generated content in seconds.
So when kind of talking about the business model canvas throughout the time that we started this idea, we wanted to focus on two really important aspects, which were the value proposition and the customer segments. Now, we came up with this idea like 7 weeks ago, which is kind of crazy to think about that, like the whole thing is like going so fast. But when we were doing the entire customer validation process, we wanted to focus on two main questions. One is who's exactly going to use all of these different types of models? And then two is which specific AI models would people actually want? And so when we came into this, the whole interview process, we had one hypothesis, which was that our customer segments were initially going to be very tech savvy people. Since AI is a very cutting edge technology, we assumed that a lot of technical people would be very interested in this. And because there's a lot of discussion about like crypto, Web3, NFTs, we thought the best place to start with this technology would be to create AI curated NFT art collections for people then to sell on other platforms such as OpenSea. And so when we did our interviews, we reached out to 40 different types of people, or not 40 different types, but 40 people with three main categories. So one is a tech savvy students from all across the nation. Then we also reached out to 15 Purdue students because they're local and we can get more instant access. And then we also reached out to 10 business owners that are all within our network. And so when we just started off by talking with the technical students, we got some incredible feedback that was kind of not what we were expecting, which was that one, students in general, not even just technical students, are just incredibly risk averse. And all this new technology that's up and coming is really confusing and needs to be broken down really, really like quite a bit in order for it to be graspable. And as a result, this whole concept of NFTs and creating a model that can just auto complete, putting it on OpenSea, whatever that may be, just was not as enticing to the technical people. So because we saw that all the tech people were like not interested, we pivoted our question away from what is the cutting edge technology that we can help make simpler to what are just things in general that will make your life easier. And so when we did the rest of our interviews, we focused on this one question, and it kind of sparked a really interesting conversation. When we asked this question, a lot of people had many different things that they wanted, from a custom wallpaper for their laptop, or a flashcard creator for studying. And then for, content creators, they wanted something to optimize their hashtags. For companies, when we asked them, they wanted a terms of service analysis, or even a startup, a company name generator. I mean, there's so many different things that people want. And we broke down all of these different wants and asks into 3 categories. So we focused on academic models, entertainment models, and then enterprise models. So academic models are primarily focused on, as we mentioned, like an essay outline creator or flashcard studying, anything that enhances the learning experience even further. Then we have entertainment models, which is just for fun, just to play around, to kind of enjoy the experience and just have some fun. So like a pickup line generator, a pun generator, an analogy creator that we mentioned in our demo. There's just so many things we can do. And then we have the enterprise models for a lot of the business sector, where you have the hashtag optimizer for social media, contract generator, so many things. The possibilities are basically endless. And so once we had those buckets, we wanted to figure out an MVP rollout strategy for our platform so we can get as much iteration and customer feedback as we go throughout the process. And so we wanted to initially target college students with the academic models as a priority. And this is not necessarily a focus for making money. This is simply to generate engagement and get some really good feedback so we can actually see what are the models that people will end up actually paying for. Because it's one thing to say like, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, but will they actually pay for it? We wanted to reach out to college students first to see like, if they are able to pay for it and they're genuinely interested, they're one of the hardest markets to penetrate. So if we can do that, we can basically go anywhere. And fundamentally, one of the visions that we have for Quasi is that ultimately we are creating tools. We want to empower people to want to do more. And as kind of like our AI pitch script generator said, you don't need to be an author to create the best-selling novel. You don't need to be a top-selling musician in order to create really cool music albums. You don't need to like be an artist to create phenomenal paintings. There's so many things you can do. And from something that like Steve Jobs once said, when the Macintosh came out, was that the computer is like a bicycle for the mind. We believe that Quasi is like a motorcycle that can propel you even faster and even further than you could ever go before. So thank you very much. And we're going to open the floor to questions.
Thank you. This is a really exciting space where I've personally had a lot of interest. I'm looking into generative AI as well. I guess a few directions to go. I'll ask a couple questions and let everyone else take it too. But I'm curious on, okay, so let's start with prior art. As a developer working on AI, I think the first places that I go to for thinking about sharing AI models is places like Hugging Face or GitHub, less so commercial marketplaces for the thing that I've made. How have you talked to a lot of developers working in AI technology about what they do with their models and their interest in making income based on their models or training?
Yeah, so like I've used Hugging Face probably for the past like 2 years. I know that GitHub is I think like Hugging Face, at least for me, is what I go to mostly. I think that we're sort of like GitHub is very code focused, and they're not really final models.
Right.
They're most like models that like can complete text but can't generate an analogy. There's sort of a step between making a model that can complete text and then making a model that makes an analogy, for example, that completes text in a specific way. So we're sort of trying to focus on that second half, where we're taking models like GPT-3, General Pre-trained Transformers 3. It's like, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very large OpenAI model, and we're essentially making it easier for people to take these general Transformers models and narrow them down to specific consumer models and then having those be sold on our platform.
Mhm. And like fundamentally, it's all about the fact that like this technology is so exciting and that there are a lot of developers that really want to create models, but the amount of time it takes, the learning curve, a lot of these things, we wanted to provide an extra barrier, or like we wanted to remove more barriers to lower the entry for some for some more developers or even potentially consumers to create their own models. And we wanted to simplify that process as much as possible. And going on places like GitHub, as Thomas said, it is more code-based as opposed to more of an intuitive platform. So that's why we wanted to focus on the consumer aspect.
Right. I almost wonder if developers, most of the time when developers train models, they're doing it for some specific like project that they have or at work. Work models you can't really monetize. Train a model at home. The types of people that are capable of doing that, I don't know if they're going to care about an extra $30, $40 of income on a market like this versus maybe, as you mentioned, end consumers with models like GPT-3, fine-tuning them, prompting them the right way. That's things that are accessible to normal people that don't know how to work Python. So I wonder if like people who are interested in AI, who want to work with these models, might be an interesting place to look for the creator side of this marketplace rather than like people who just live and breathe AI, just because it's a little more novel to them. They might enjoy that process more than people who work with AI. Like, at least from one person's perspective. Yeah, I think the end user versus developer on that side of the market is really interesting. Yeah. On the verticals, I think your pivot of NFTs are an interesting space, but right now they're, I think, much smaller space than things like wallpaper generators and things like that you mentioned. You put a ton on the slide and you mentioned students specifically. I think each of these small verticals can be like any one of these, like wallpapers or domain names or company names, are like, you can start with any one of them and grow them really big before going on to another one. I'm curious if you found, even in just the student domain, any one problem space or like generative problem, like a space for generative things made with AI that you find interesting based on your interviews.
Yeah, I think one thing that like Thomas and I had a really interesting conversation about is that one, there's always going to be a non-zero amount of people interested in something. It's kind of like when Amazon was like releasing books on their platform at first. They wanted to make sure that all the smaller scale books that people are still interested in, because there's a non-zero amount, that they had a place to be able to buy and sell those books. So I think for us, we wanted to start off with focusing on a lot of things that one, college students really want, which is a lot of the academic-based models. And so I think that the areas that we found that were really interesting was one, like an essay outline generator for like a research paper, or a flashcard creator, as we mentioned. And then on the more fun side, like someone once mentioned, like they wanted a fart joke generator. Like, it's like things like that just to drive excitement and make things just fun, and kind of breaking down this Skynet impression of what AI is into more of a fun, just exciting thing that people can just play around and try it with. That's kind of what the ultimate goal is. And we want to make sure that the models that we launch on the platform, we're trying to launch about 50 to start off with as an MVP. And the ones that we choose are going to be very, very selective in terms of equal fun, learning opportunity, and like developer tools.
Yeah, and I guess to answer that question in a more broad sense, like there's already like AI places that make AI content out there. But the thing is that they all, like what you said, they only focus on one model. So you go to this one site and all they do is, generates website copy. But like what people want is they don't just want one model for website copy, because that's too general. They want like, this will generate sarcastic website copy. This generates blog-esque website copy. They want to be able to query and have like thousands of models they can choose from with a bunch of different reviews and not be forced to just stick with one. So that's kind of why the platform is a unique take on this AI space.
Yeah, I think there's a service called illicit.org, ELICIT.org. That's for researchers. They have they use a GPT-3 fine-tuned on research, like academic research literature, to help academics ask. You can ask a question like, what is the impact of plastics in the ocean and climate change, and it'll find papers that are relevant to that question, and you can fine tune the results and things like that. And they also have a side where end users can write prompts to GPT-3 and share it with other researchers. So it's kind of like there's no money being exchanged, but it's like an open marketplace. So I think you can dig into any one of these verticals and have something that's compelling, especially if people who are in need of these models can have access to, like if I have a problem, I like write a prompt to get GPT-3 to solve the problem. If I can share it with other people and make some money or get some interest, I think that'd be exciting. So I think this is a really cool space for sure. The last thing that I'll add, this more just a comment, is I think royalty-free photos or music sites might be an interesting business model to look at. I don't know if you've thought about that at all, but especially if you're depending on end users rather than developers to create models like this or prompts like this, that might be an interesting model.
We'll add it to the list. We'll add to the list. There's so many. Yeah. I mean, like when we have this conversation with people, fundamentally, they're just like, oh my God, this is so cool. Let me here's a suggestion. Let's do this. So definitely we'll look into it a little bit more for that. That's really good.
Oh, the last thing I'll add is a question, which is, have you thought about cost of compute? And running models like this costs a little more than just running a normal EC2 box. Is it a concern at all for you, especially if you're letting people run these things for free?
Yeah, so when it comes to GPT-3 does cost money, but the money that the developers are making from the model is they could set their own prices. Why it's a marketplace? Let's say I made a TikTok script generator and it has a bunch of usage. It's the top rated model for TikTok script writers. I can increase my prices. So the developers themselves set the prices. But we have a calculator, we're working on a calculator that'll say this is the price you need to set minimum, at least to break even with the
okay.
And then when it comes to I've been over winter break, I made a music making model. And then before I forked Big Sleep, which is an image making model. And I've been messing around with those, and those compute costs are going to be quite high, which is why we sort of want to prove out the platform with text before we move into images and music, and then eventually videos, which is probably going to be the most intense compute cost. But yeah, we've definitely been looking into compute costs.
Got it. So you're just passing that on to the person making the money. That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey guys, great presentation, and you guys are definitely shooting for the moon. So great job on that. I guess a couple of questions for you guys. So firstly, I think it's very hard to build a marketplace, right? Like any marketplace, because you need both the demand and the supply side. So building a company in that niche is very hard on its own. And then you guys are taking a challenge on top of that, where your demand side is only people who can create these very complex models, to kind of put developers who can create these complex models to put on your platform, correct? So I wanted to ask you guys, what's the market for that? How many developers do you see who will give the time, they have the motivation and they put in the money to kind of create something? And I'll tell you why, because there's this company, I don't know if you guys know, I think it's called Sonic. It's like an AI platform where you can basically give them a tagline and it writes a blog post for you. So it's a company on its own, right? It has, I think, over 50 people working on it. And it requires a lot of capital to kind of build that. And that's one company on its own. And now what you guys are wanting is that having that company be on your platform as a marketplace. So I wanted to understand what's the thinking of these companies not becoming their own startups versus becoming a small enough project to be part of your platform.
Yeah, so before Thomas jumps in to talk a little bit more about the bigger picture, I think one thing for me, I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer. I know nothing about this. This is more of just I've been learning by learning from Thomas. And in order to create a model, I went on the Quasi site that we made and basically just filled out, is basically just kind of like a Google form, a glorified Google form. And I was able to create an AI model. So in terms of the upfront learning curve, it was not that difficult in terms of just once you understand the basics of kind of what are some things that we're looking for and some of the sliders that you just have to click and move around. For me, making a model was not incredibly difficult, but I also understand that for a startup, having a standalone, like there's so many standalone startups that are creating their own thing. And Thomas is going to probably say this, but like, if you can't beat them, join them. So, creating the whole thing and just having them be on a platform.
I get that. Just like double clicking on what you mentioned, right? Like you created a model, but like how good was that model? That's what really matters, because like someone, when you tell them this idea, it looks really cool, right? Like I went to that ride Sonic. Like as soon as I learned of it, I went to it, put my own tagline to it. But how good is the model? That really matters, because each model that you're going to create on your platform requires a huge data set, right? It requires computational power. It requires CapEx. And so the model can be okay. Like if it's like 50-60% okay, that's not really okay for the consumer to be coming, again and again. Yeah, they might come and use it 2-3 times, but to have that, long user retention, you really need the model to be of the highest quality. That's why I mentioned that company, because that's why they're spending so much money to have like their efficacy to be 95%, right? So that people, once they come in and they put the tagline, like they're like, yeah, dude, this works. This is going to be my homework. Let's say he's going to write my English homework. But if it only works 50-60%, it creates a doubt in the user's mind. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on like, how do you think you can create that huge space, that entire universe? And I love the fact that you guys are trying to do this, but I just wanted to get your perspective on how do you guys think you can achieve that just on your own platform?
Yeah, so a few things. Thing number one is that, like, of course, if a startup has like a bunch of employees, like their model will probably be better than ours. But again, we're not trying to compete on an individual model level. We're trying to give choice, because again, there's even if there's only one startup doing that thing, if it's successful, there's going to be another one that's going to pop up, and then they're going to have to compete. So what we want to do is just compete instead of singular models. We're competing with a variety of models. So you'll be able to search, like, blog post writer, instead of coming up with one model where it's just this one startup, thousands of models, and you get to choose. And so there'll be the ones that are, specifically targeted to this niche and that niche. And that's sort of what we're trying to do. Sure, they may not be like incredible on an individual level, but you'll be able to find what you're looking for in a sense of variety. And another thing is, again, we have the incentive structure. So again, the better your model, the better the ratings, the more money you get. So you're incented to create the best model you can. And third thing is that we have the consumers already on our platform. So if you're going to make a model, might as well make it and post it where people are going to use it, because they're already searching for, TikTok script writers or analogy makers or stuff like that.
Yeah, so I get the point, right? Like you're trying to give people choice, but like I get it. The first time the person comes on, they'll use it because there's choice, and second time they'll use it because there's choice, but third time they really want a high quality product. And that's why I mean, you guys can like, you don't have to take my word, and I also have limited knowledge, but you guys should try and dig deep into it. Like rather than being, in so many areas and in so many spaces and, giving your consumer whatever they want, maybe have like a niche, right? Like maybe only fintech things that you guys have on your platform, or, some things with consumer, like you said, like the entertainment piece, or just the academic things. Like if you're an academic developer and you want to write models, you come to my platform and we provide you with resources, we provide you with knowledge, and we incentivize those developers. Like maybe if you have a niche, I think it will have, you can get better results. And then also I wanted to add, like you said, like you have consumers. So there's another platform that you guys should look into, which is called Micro Acquire. It's a platform that like recently popped up, I think a couple of years back, and it basically enables anyone to buy a startup. So let's say I create like an API thing or whatever, and I can just put it on that. Let's say I'm just earning $500 from that startup every month, and I have like 2 clients. I can put it on Micro Acquire and someone else can buy it. So you can basically buy cash flow, or like buy a startup that's generating cash flow, right? So that already exists. And the biggest problem, like there was an article recently, and the biggest problem that they found was that there was not high quality enough startups, right? Like, and consumers didn't know how to kind of like use that. There's a lot of options. Like if you go on the platform even right now, you can find a variety of things that people are trying to build. But it's just not high quality, and that's why there's not like consumer retention, right? Like if they're like, oh, I built this API and it's now selling for $500 or $1,000. It's good. I have options, but not quality. So think about it. Food for thought. But yeah, great job. And, I love the entire thought process and like the space that you're trying to build.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, real quick. So you said you would start with your academic model first. You mentioned flashcard creator and an essay outline generator. Like if I'm a student, what other values are you bringing to me? Like you mentioned two things. What would be my motivation to want to use your platform?
Yeah, so I think there's like when we were talking with students, because those like at least 30 of those people were university students, they wanted to look at things that will enhance the entire learning experience.
Okay.
And so things that they were, and like the reason why we mentioned those two specific things is because that was what the majority of people were asking us is like, hey, I want to learn this content better, but so much work for me to do it myself, to create the flashcards, to do it all. If I just say, give it just like a portion of a textbook or just like a lecture slide, and then it just outputs a flashcard set for me to study, it would be so much easier. Or if I input the syllabus, it'll give me an outline for an essay that can cover a certain content. And so there's just, for like those two things, it really branches out to a lot of the other specific like research papers or academic essays that need to be written. And then from there, we can get little niches that are involved in terms of the studying process. And then also one thing that we're creating is sort of like an ask me anything bot where you can say, you can like ask, like input a query like explain calculus at a 5th grade level, and then it'll just answer like here's what calculus is. It's the study of whatever. And so there's that aspect too, which is just like a natural curiosity to wanting to go more in depth on a certain topic that they don't know. So we kind of have a Q&A bot embedded as well. Another thing we're exploring.
Yeah, and again, besides like those two models, we had other suggestions. Like a lot of people said like, oh, I want a model that'll just generate, practice math questions or practice questions for social studies, so I can like learn this topic better and stuff like that.
Have you thought about flipping that as well as a professor myself, about so the other end of it? So I, as a professor, want to generate content on, whatever, if I'm teaching, accounting 402 or whatever, like not just going to the students to help them learn better, but also, did you talk to any professors, or did that thought, for me to be able to generate better quality content to deliver to, like, oh, I want to make a study guide for whatever quiz I'm, like think about, in that relationship, you have more than one customer, I believe.
No, exactly. And that's something that we're exploring and talking with people. And fundamentally for our rollout, we want to get the student side so that when we go to the professor, we're like, hey, the students have been using this. This is really cool. Do you want us to adapt it or make it something that's more personal to you and then better use? In order to convince us to change the mentality of kind of providing those opportunities, you need the student or an overwhelming majority, which is why we start with the students and building that out.
And also we're gonna have like a form that you can enter if you just have a model idea. Like if you search on a website and the model doesn't show up, it could just be like, oh, click here and let us know what model we should make. So you could be like, that generator would be nice.
I mean, I would be interested in it from an academic standpoint, from the delivery model side, and that industry of like education delivery is huge, especially, with online education and learnings. To me, that is, and you can monetize that potentially easier than you can monetize onesie twosie students. Right. Like you can monetize that, like sell it to a university, like, hey, this helps your professors, or everybody is trying to, at Butler, we're trying to come up with more online content for delivery to executives and stuff. So education delivery is a huge market itself. And to me, you're selling B2B more per se versus B2C in that model. So don't discount your academics in that model of delivery. I think you have a bigger fish if you go after the other side of the equation.
No, 100%. I definitely agree with that. And that's why, like, with the 3 buckets that we had, 50% of it was with academic models, because there's just so much potential there.
It's a huge market, huge market.
And so for us to go to B2B, we first want to make sure that the data set that we have and like the iterations that we're making because especially at a startup level, we want to make sure that when we approach the businesses, that we have something of tangible value. And, as Arpan mentioned, where it's at a 80 to 90% level of accuracy, so that it's like basically there's no question whether you should work with Quasi. So that's kind of what our strategy is going to be. Start off with the consumers, get the validation, do the iteration, then approach B2B. So I 100% agree. And we're definitely thinking about it.
Yes, Quasi, we need to wrap up. If you wouldn't mind ending your share screen, and judges, please take a minute to prepare for Soul Solutions.
Great, thanks.